Now, let's say, hypothetically, that there was a movie with the plot of Die Hard and all the problematic high school shenanigans of 13 Reasons Why. And then, let's just say, hypothetically, for the sake of the argument, that that movie was produced by conservative bad boy Ben Shapiro. And now we can infer, just for the sake of our conversation, that that movie got reviewed poorly on Rotten Tomatoes and other movie review sites. So then we could conclude that all movie critics are part of the liberal Hollywood elite, and their only goal in life is to stifle voices like that of conservative bad boy, sex symbol, and very handsome man, Ben Shapiro.
That's right, boys and girls. Turns out that wasn't a hypothetical at all, because a few weeks ago, a movie was released that was produced by Ben Shapiro's company, The Daily Wire. The movie is called Run, Hide, Fight. And I'm not going to get into the plot details of the movie this early in the video because it would undoubtedly get age restricted. But I'm sure everyone has an opinion about Ben Shapiro, and I'm not here to tell you whether you should love or hate Ben Shapiro. However, if it isn't clear already from my other videos, my political opinions tend to lean a little bit, to this way. They go this way. Oh, whoa, oh man, Is this what the deep state is? Yeah, I'm sure a lot of my own biases will come through in this video, but my goal is not to tell you whether or not his ideology is good or bad, but rather that the fact that he is a controversial person should not be used as a scapegoat to explain away any negative criticism that he gets. But before we get into the reasons why the movie itself is bad, and there are many, I think it's important to establish a little bit of context. Why did the conservative news giant with devilishly good looks, Ben Shapiro, get into producing TV and film? Ben actually grew up around the film industry. His father was a composer, and his mom was a network executive. So, it's no surprise that someone with such a privileged upbringing would have a comprehensive understanding of racial injustice in the United States. Sorry, I'm not going to get political. Anyway, growing up in this world, Shapiro decided to write a script of his own. He submitted it to several TV networks. He described it as a dramedy set in Harvard Law School, which, can't we just all relate to that on a personal level?
And have they been bought?
No. But the show never got picked up by any networks, and Ben, of course, attributes that to no fault of his own, but he states that his work was, and I quote, silenced by liberalism. No, I've never read the script. I don't actually know if Ben has released it publicly in any way, but what I've read of his book, True Allegiance, I think it's safe to say that at least the sole reason for them rejecting it was not because that they were liberal. So now, after years of being rejected by the Hollywood elites, Shapiro has returned triumphantly to the TV and film business. And thankfully, to give some clarification, he actually released a statement on the Daily Wire's website. And I'm not going to read the whole statement to you, but I did want to pull a couple quotes because I think they are pretty good.
That's why when I'm asked how to raise a conservative kid, my first two recommendations are cultural rather than political. Go to church or synagogue or mosque and regularly attend 4th of July parades.
This isn't really relevant to what I'm talking about, but I just thought it was really funny because he says the cornerstones of being a conservative involve attending religious gatherings and going to 4th of July parades. Like nothing about character, nothing about like holding values or anything like that. Just attend these things and it'll all work out. Also, regularly attend 4th of July parades. Never mind the blatant nationalism, but I actually live in Nashville where Ben recently moved, and I don't know what it's like back in LA, but we only have one 4th of July a year. So is he like going to one fireworks display on 4th of July, and like after the first firework goes off, he's like, all right, kids, we got to get in the car. I want you to be good conservatives.
But conservatives have never truly understood the cultural battle. Yes, we occasionally fight the culture war from time to time. We fight back against some idiotic TV show or nasty movie, but the simple truth is that we conservatives live increasingly in the same culture as those on the left.
Now, I get the sentiment behind this quote in context. Like, I don't think it's fundamentally bad or closed-minded to want to see more TV shows and movies that agree with your viewpoint. Whether or not that viewpoint itself is closed-minded is neither here nor there. But I do take issue with the statement itself, because it kind of implies that it's bad for different cultures to interact with one another. Like, I get that you believe that your culture is the right culture, no pun intended, but shouldn't the goal be to have equal representation for everybody as opposed to just owning the libtards in the culture war? Also, the movie that he's showing as an alternative to this nasty and idiotic culture is Run, Hide, Fight. I mean, I'll obviously get more into the details of the movie in the review portion of this video, but it's about a school shooting. There are some really violent scenes in this movie, and they say the word. Sounds pretty nasty to me, Ben. So Shapiro goes on to compare conservative news outlets like Fox News and the Daily Wire to Netflix, Hulu, and Disney Plus, saying that the latter put up a lot of higher numbers in terms of ratings than the former. Which, first of all, yes, communist propaganda site Disney Plus is beating you in the culture war. But also, those aren't news outlets. This is comparing apples to oranges. All this indicates is that people would rather watch Hamilton 5 times a week than watch this.
Wet ass P word. Make that pullout game weak.
And more generally, people would just like to watch TV shows as opposed to news. But let's just say, hypothetically, for the sake of the argument, that Ben is implying that the streaming services are more successful as a result of the systemic oppression that he has ironically outlined for himself. Could it not be then, hypothetically, that these streaming services are just putting out content with more agreeable ideologies than his? Could we not then infer that just maybe he shouldn't dismiss everything as postmodern neo-Marxism? I'm not trying to say that just because the things on Disney Plus and Netflix are popular means that they're right and good, but I am saying that he should at least see that content and not take it as a counterculture, but he should just take it as an opportunity to reflect on his own ideology and maybe see that it's more or less valid than he thinks it is. Anyway, I'm getting way ahead of myself, but the article is basically just saying that the reason that he's getting into this counter film industry is to be an alternative for conservatives, which I've already said. Yeah. So that's the context that Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire are bringing into the production and subsequent backlash of the movie Run, Hide, Fight, but they aren't the only ones. The movie is also produced by a guy named Dallas Sonnier. If you don't know who that is, he's best known for starting a production company in Dallas, Texas called Cinestate. Their most notable film was called Bone Tomahawk. Now, I'm a fan of this movie. I like it, but I do recognize that it is really gruesome and definitely not for everybody. Anyway, the reason he established his company in Dallas, Texas was not necessarily as like a counterculture to the film industry or anything, at least at the time, but it was just to sort of decentralize the film industry and show that it could exist in America outside of Hollywood, which I think is great. The company was not active for very long, however, as the result of just some classic, old-fashioned, homegrown Me Too allegations. Now, to be clear, the Me Too allegations were not leveled against Dallas Sonnier directly, but there were some straight-up statutory grape allegations leveled against a guy named Adam Donahue who worked in his company. I guess you could say that they're lucky they didn't call the company Cinephile. Did that not? Okay. So basically, this woman came out and said that Donahue her when she was 16 while they were both working on the set of the movie A Ghost Story. When Donahue got arrested, it came out that he'd actually engaged in several acts of actual misconduct over the course of his career. And the way that this all ties into Dallas Sonnier is he knew about it for years and did nothing. You see, it all comes back. It all comes full circle now. So now, Sonnier has been what some would call canceled. Others would call it being held marginally accountable for being complacent in some truly horrific acts. Either way, this gives us the context we need when going into this movie. We have, on one hand, a conservative bad boy intellectual who feels he's been excommunicated from mainstream media. Never mind the fact that the guy literally met with Facebook about pushing his content while actively suppressing leftist content. And on the other hand, we have this guy who's been Me Too'd in the classic sense of the word, but he's been more focused on how someone is, quote, out to get him, as opposed to reflecting on this issue and, committing to doing better. Apparently what you get when you put that volatile combination together is a little film called Run, Hide, Fight. Probably goes without saying at this point, this video is obviously not going to culminate in a recommendation for this movie, but spoilers from here on out for the movie Run, Hide, Fight. The way that we're going to do this is I'm just going to go through the movie scene by scene, and then every once in a while I'm going to stop, take a break, and just assess. The movie starts with our protagonist, Zoe, going on an early morning hunting trip with her dad. And on this hunting trip, she shoots a deer, and they get up close to it, and they realize it's still alive. Her dad tries to explain to her very delicately that she needs to put the deer out of its misery, but before he has the chance to do that, she picks up a giant boulder and bashes the deer's skull in. I'm not exaggerating at all. That's literally the first thing we see our protagonist do in the film. Then they go home and her dad says, I think you need to get some professional help. You're clearly not mentally stable. And she's all like, shut up, Dad. You're not my mom. Oh yeah, we also find out in this scene that her mom died recently. Now, her mom, she still sees her mom throughout the movie. Not like as a ghost, but as like a vision. I guess it's just a way to tell on screen that she's having a hard time letting go of her mom and dealing with her death. So yeah, she's got some issues. It's also important to note that she has some sort of attachment to her dad's military uniform, so she always wears his jacket, like to school, like every single day.
Take off my jacket. You go out into the world without that jacket.
Her friend picks her up for school. They drive to school, say some cringy stuff on the way, get driven off the road by some bullies. Typical high school stuff.
Thanks, guys. Stay woke.
They get there. There's some more cringy dialogue that reminds me of 13 Reasons Why, because it's trying really hard to be like hip and young, but in reality it was written by this guy. So this act of the movie, if you can call it that, culminates with Zoe's friend asking her to prom and her declining. Her friend lets slip that he thinks that she's emotionally shut down, which she is, but also rude. She gets offended by this and storms off, and then the next thing you know, school shooting. All right, now let's step back for a second. From what I've told you so far, you're probably thinking, oh, she's the shooter, right? Like she's the shooter. She literally crushed the skull of a deer, and she has some very obvious trauma from some recent loss in her life, and she also has a weird affection for military stuff. Like she's the shooter, right? And more importantly, it feels like the perfect setup from a writing standpoint. But no, this is our main character. She is deeply flawed, but she's also unapologetically correct and does exactly what the writer deems good and true the entire time. Like a school Harry Potter. So when Zoe runs to the bathroom as a result of being offended by her friend asking her to prom, a group of 4 kids in a van burst through the cafeteria wall and hop out and start shooting kids. After the initial shock wears off, though, they just kind of stop. I guess after a while they just felt like they had intimidated the kids enough. Then the leader of the group, because school need a leader, they're planned out like a bank heist, and they need a mastermind behind it all. Anyway, the leader tells all the kids to get out their phones and start live streaming on whatever social media apps they use because he wants to send a message. But he's never really clear on what that message is exactly. A little bit later in the movie, the principal comes in and kind of confronts the leader, Tristan, and he assumes that he is doing this because he went to his office twice the prior week because he was in trouble. But Tristan reveals that he planned to go to the principal's office on purpose so that he could steal and make a copy of his keys. So we really never learn why he's doing any of this other than just to create chaos. Also in that scene, the security guard comes in and Tristan, instead of shooting him, just mocks him and says, "Ha!"
As if it's not sad enough that they're only paying him $12 an hour to protect our school, they expect you to do it without a f***ing gun?
But I might be overstepping my bounds here, but that sounds like an agenda you're pushing there. When all Ben Shapiro talks about is how the liberal media pushes agendas. Gee, okay, this joke is not worth it. This is going to take forever. But yeah, Ben has always talked about how liberal media and movies are bad because they shamelessly push a biased agenda. He always talks about it like it's bad on principle, right? Like, he even mentioned something to that effect in the statement I mentioned earlier. But yet he produced this movie that is so blatantly pushing a pro-gun agenda. So could it be that it's not agendas that Ben hates, it's just any agenda that differs from his own? To be clear, I'm not saying that pushing an agenda in your movie is inherently bad when done well. But it's just, it's hypocrisy. He's a hypocrite. That's what I'm trying to say. Rant over. So at this point, our protagonist has escaped the cafeteria through the vents because Die Hard. And the rest of the movie, the bulk of it at least, is just her going classroom to classroom and telling everybody to evacuate because there's an active shooter on site. And I must say, she comes across several hopelessly incompetent teachers. I hesitated putting this part in the video because obviously these are really unprecedented situations that no one could truly be prepared for. But there's at least 2 or 3 scenarios in the movie where she walks in and tells the teacher that there's an active shooter, and the teacher's like, okay, Zoe, let me take it from here. And then Zoe's like, no, Teach, I've got to save the school for my dead mom and America. And the teacher just lets her. Like, she just leaves, and the teacher's like, oh, no, wait, Zoe, no. Zoe, wait, no, come back, Zoe, wait. She's gone. Well, better her than me. So like I said, the next chunk of the movie is pretty straightforward. Zoe's going classroom to classroom, helping people escape. The bad guys run around a little bit. Zoe shoots a fellow child in the face. Your classic high school riffraff. It's also around this time that we begin to get some level of characterization for the shooters. I mean, don't get me wrong, I love some good glorified child violence, but we gotta have a reason for it. Right. I already mentioned that Zoe shoots a fellow child in the face pretty early on in the movie. That is Tristan's girlfriend, and that is her character. That girl's brother, this kid with the buzz cut, Chris, we find out has a severe mental disorder where he hears voices in his head. We also find out that he is also romantically involved with Tristan. Like, they mention it in passing, and I assume that would be a setup for an internal conflict within them that would ultimately be their undoing by the end of the film, but they literally never mention it again in the movie. Then we have this curly-haired, larger boy with a shotgun, and his name is Kip, and he gets a surprising amount of character development for this movie. So Zoe subdues Kip and takes his gun in a very Home Alone-esque way, because, that's the tone of a school shooting. He explains to her that he has been brutally bullied since middle school, to the point where teachers even bullied him, and so that's why he was kind of attracted to Tristan's ideas. Now, Zoe's response is not to empathize with him at all, which is fair. He did kill kids, for sure. But she basically says to him, I like to paraphrase, but she says, quit being a little bitch and stop blaming everybody else for your problems. And she literally has the audacity to say that it's not the teacher's fault because they didn't know any better. What the dude? Like, I get it in the context. This kid killed Zoe's friends, and she herself is an emotional teenager. But do not put this scene in your movie if you're going to use it to tell me that teachers who literally bully and tease children are not the least bit responsible for those children's actions. Like, if you bully a kid and tell him that he's fat or stupid or lie to him, for instance, deep down as a teacher that kid is very impressionable and he's going to take to heart the things you say. So when that child acts on the things that you tell them, you absolutely bear some of the responsibility. Apparently, though, this tough love thing that Zoe does with the kid ends up working because by the end of the movie, he switches sides and helps her defeat the school shooters. Now, you're probably thinking to yourself at this point, well, yeah, but those are all side characters, right? I'm sure the main shooter, Tristan, has a lot more character development, right? Well, no. He's basically just a really boring version of the Joker. Like I mentioned earlier, we really never know what his motivations are for shooting in the first place, other than just to cause chaos and send a message. There are a few bits in the movie, though, ironically, that I would say reveal his political leanings.
Trigger warning. It's not that hard to build a wall. We're not Nazis.
Getting back to the plot of the movie, after having the heart-to-heart with Kip, Zoe links up with one of her teachers to help evacuate the building. It should be noted, though, that the entire time that the teacher and Zoe are together, Zoe is walking around with a loaded weapon, that she makes no attempt to confiscate. And at this point, Zoe has a bullet hole in her leg. And the teacher's just like, sounds good to me, let's go fight some crime. Eventually, Zoe makes her way back to the cafeteria. At this point, Kip is helping her. And they get into a little standoff with Tristan and Chris. It's also at this point in the movie that Zoe's dad has set up a little sniper position outside the school to kill children. Zoe escapes and hides in some random classroom, and Chris chases after her, but not to worry because her dad, the sniper, blows his brains out. Because you don't have to give a character attributes when they aren't alive. Okay, I get obviously the dad's motivations behind doing this, like he wants to protect his daughter, but if you're going to establish in the movie that Zoe can very much handle herself, like she has already taken out multiple of these kids in sometimes Home Alone-esque scenarios, why not just have that happen one more time as opposed to making her dad be a literal child murderer? I don't know, man. So at this point, Tristan knows that he's lost the day, right? So he starts the timer for the bomb that's in their van. I think I forgot to mention that earlier. There's a bomb in their van. He leaves, but of course Zoe makes it in there in time to not only evacuate the children into the parking lot, but then she pushes the van with the bomb in it into the parking lot where she just let the kids out into. I mean, I guess she's really concerned with property damage. This isn't fun anymore. Anyway, somehow none of the kids get injured. Zoe makes it out okay. She finds her dad sitting in a cop car because he's been arrested on account of the whole vigilante homicide thing. Zoe notices, however, that there's a kid walking with a limp in the crowd, and she realizes that it's Tristan and he's actually trying to escape. So she goes and grabs her dad's gun. Yes, because even though they arrested him immediately after firing the gun, they just left it there, because why would it be evidence? I love this. She follows him to this creek where I guess he had passports stashed away for his escape. She shoots him and then walks up to him and gives him this long monologue about how she's super great and how no one will remember him. Then she picks up a boulder, and we're meant to think that she's about to crush his skull like she did with the deer in the beginning of the movie. A little callback there, but instead she just throws the boulder down next to his head and presumably lets him bleed out of his now multiple gun wounds. See, now she's moved on from these, brutal, more instant killings to longer, drawn out, more subtle killing. Character development. And you're probably thinking, well, yeah, he, along with everyone else who was involved in the school shooting, probably does deserve that, that brutal death, but I just feel like if you're going to make a movie about a school shooting, you at least have to touch on the phenomenon behind why kids do school shootings in the first place. It just feels really, really shallow to just paint them out as these Bond villains with no real motivation or real conflict going on inside them. Yeah, that's kind of where we're left at the end of the movie. Zoe walks back to the crowd of people, some patriotic song about America plays, and the credits roll. I mean, I'm assuming she immediately got arrested because she just did shoot an unarmed man in cold blood. And don't get me wrong, what Tristan did was evil, but laws are laws, right? Like, we can't just give special treatment to people because... Oh. So that's the movie. There are a few things that I didn't really discuss because if it's not already obvious at this point, I found the movie exhaustingly bad. Not to mention I had to watch the movie multiple times while writing the script for this video. Like, I've probably seen the movie more times than Ben Shapiro himself, and I am genuinely struggling to find anything redeeming to say about the movie. I guess it's shot nice. I mean, it's pretty bland, to be honest, but it does take place entirely in a high school, so that's probably intentional. I guess I like most of the actors as well. I mean, the main girl is pretty annoying and bad, and this kid makes me uncomfortable, but I mean, Tristan and the rest of the gang, they're pretty competent. I wouldn't mind seeing them in other things. Obviously, my criticisms with the movie are not based on the technical aspects. It's more about the writing, execution, and marketing of the movie. I think I've already explained enough at this point why the writing sucks. I don't want to beat a dead horse. Or I guess a dead deer. The thing that pisses me off most about this movie is that it was marketed as a movie without an agenda. But that's obviously not true. Like, come on, man.
He's shooting up a school live on the internet, but giving me his number will violate his privacy.
Haha, aren't regulations bad when they make it harder for cops to infringe on people's rights? When you're trying to tell a heroic story of a girl who kills a bunch of school shooters, first of all, don't do that, but you have to understand that that topic is inherently political, whether you like it or not. Ben Shapiro and the Daily Wire didn't have anything to do with the back-end production of this movie. They were just in charge of distributing and marketing the film, which, to their credit, is the only reason that I'm talking about it. And given the backlash that the movie has gotten, Ben Shapiro has gone on the defense, saying that everyone who reviewed the movie, gave it a 25% on Rotten Tomatoes, just has a liberal bias and doesn't know what they're talking about. And to be fair to him, did the people who reviewed the movie have a liberal bias? Yeah, maybe. But everyone who reviews anything has their own biases going into it, and I don't think that should make their opinion or criticism inherently invalid. On the other side of this, you have Ben Shapiro's fans, who I'm sure love him and want to see him succeed, so they bombed the movie with positive reviews, so the fan score on Rotten Tomatoes is really high, when in actuality they probably didn't even watch the movie. I did read through some of the fan reviews for the movie on Rotten Tomatoes, and I think it's fair to say that they are at least familiar with Ben Shapiro's work. A fine motion picture. Unfortunately, it does not reflect the current crop of whiny, entitled snowflakes, signaling their virtue in using the wrong toilet. For this reason, the plotline is pure fantasy. Cinematography is excellent, though. The acting is first-rate, and we will hopefully see these same actors in more films. I feel this guy doesn't have a profile picture on Rotten Tomatoes, but I feel like if he did, it'd be one of those ones where it's like a selfie shot in your car wearing Oakleys and a trucker hat, not smiling. What I'm really trying to get at with this video is that when people like Ben Shapiro get negative criticism leveled at them, they shouldn't just immediately write it off as a part of a culture war or as somebody trying to silence their beliefs. They should just take it for what it is, criticism. Just to be clear, my intention with the video is not to offend anyone who likes or agrees with Ben Shapiro. Was the review a little bit snarky? Maybe a little. I just think that the movie is legitimately awful and that Ben Shapiro has a gross misunderstanding of the criticism it's getting. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this video a lot more than I enjoyed actually watching the movie. I know I haven't uploaded anything in a really long time. I've just felt like in the past year and in the past few months in particular that I haven't been really motivated to make a video talking about some random stupid movie when there's so much horrible stuff going on in the world. Not to say that we're out of the woods with that in any capacity, but I just felt like with the controversy of this movie, it was kind of interesting to me, and also the movie's really bad. So thanks for watching, like and subscribe and all that good stuff, and I will hopefully sooner rather than later see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
This is good stuff.